So now we are going to discuss about the most important part in the code, but the part which is not usually given a proper attention. Rather, this has been neglected. Most of us have not shown any interest or taken any efforts to read the scope and limitations of the code. But this is the most important part without which one should not start reading the code. So what are the things which have been given in the code? Those are the things what we are very interested in. So what are the things which have been given in the code? Let us have a look at one by one. So here, as we can see, one question has come, right? What is that question? Can we have U stamp for pump casing? Isn't it very interesting that we have taken, let's say, U stamps for pressure vessels, heat exchangers, columns for certain vessels? But have you ever heard about whether we can have a U stamp for pump casing? So, is it the case that you have come across ever? Or what is your opinion on that? So, whether we can have U stamp for even pump casing? So, does code allow us for that or not? We cannot have, as it is a rotating equipment, it has an impeller, so we cannot have used stem for that. What is your opinion on that? So we are come to know about these questions answer at the end of this slides. So now let us go to the next question. It is also very important question. Let's say you might have come across. So can we have use stamp for reciprocating cylinder of an engine? Have you ever heard about having use stamp for reciprocating cylinder? Here the piston is reciprocating and the cylinder which will be stationary. So can we have use time for that? So is the code tells us anything about that? So that is also very important point. So what is your opinion on that? You just keep that thing in your mind. Whether your answer is yes, whether your answer is no, you just hold that opinion. And at the end of this presentation, at the end of this lecture, you are in a position to answer all these questions thoroughly. So let's move to the next one. Can we have use time for DN50 pipe? So DN is nothing but the nominal diameter. So usually for DN50 pipe, there is only a pipe which is having a diameter, let's say nominal bore diameter of 50. So can we have use time for that? Does the code allows us for that? Or whether it is compulsory to have the use time for such pipes as well? So just hold your questions and answers as well so that we can have them at the end of this presentation. Can we have use stamp for control wall body? Another tricky one. So you may have come across the piping wherein these control walls are very commonly used for the distribution of flow, right? So whether we can have use stamp for that. When we are saying use stamp means what? The ASME Section 8 Division 1 design, inspection, fabrication, testing, material procurement, every requirement if we are going to satisfy. So the stamp will be given which is called as a use stamp. So can we have such a stamp for pump casing, reciprocating cylinder of an engine, then for piping, then for control valve body? What is your opinion on that? So whether it is possible, not possible, what the code tells us about that. So let us read it directly from the code. So scope and limitations of the code. So this is the statement what has been given in the code based on the committee's consideration. When we are saying committee, that is the ASME committee which have formulated the ASME code. So based on committee's consideration, the following classes of vessels are not included in the scope of the division. So what it has been written, those are not included in the scope of the division. So when we are saying this division means ASME section at division 1. So the committee says the following classes of pressure vessels are out of the scope of this division. However, this is the golden statement. However, any pressure vessel which meets all the applicable requirements of this division means section 8 division 1 may be stamped with the certification mark with U designator. What they are saying, the following classes of vessels are excluded from the scope of section 8 division 1. However, but if you still satisfy all the design, material procurement, fabrication, testing requirement as per ASME section 8 division 1, even for this out of the scope equipments or the classes of the vessels, you can have use stamp for those. So what are those equipments which are usually not included in the scope of this division? So those are which are covered in the other section, like power boilers. So the boilers are covered under section 1. So those are not required to be designed as per ASME section and division 1. But still, if you perform the all calculations, material procurement, testing, inspection, everything as per ASME section and division 1, you can still get U stamp for that. But does that mean the power boiler does not require to satisfy section 1 requirement? No. Section 1 is applicable for sure. But if you still want to have U stamp, which nobody wants usually, but if you still want to have, you can certainly satisfy division 1 requirement and you can get U stamp for that. So usually what is excluded, which is already covered in the other scope of the sections. So fire process tubular heaters. For fire heaters, there is another section given, right? So in that section of ASME, it has been covered. So it is not required to be considered under division 1. But again, the statement, however, what? If you still want to have U stamp, you can certainly satisfy all U stamp requirements and you can get it. Pressure containers, which are integral parts of the components of rotating or reciprocating mechanical devices. The pressure containers are integral part or components of the rotating or reciprocating mechanical devices such as pumps, compressor, turbines, generators, engines, hydraulics, or pneumatic cylinders. So what do you mean by that? So pressure containers, which are integral part of the components of rotating or reciprocating mechanical devices. When we are saying integral part, means these are not separable, right? So pump casing, usually if you have seen, it is a casting. It is not separable. So it is an integral part of that device, and that device is not there to store the liquid or pressure, or we can say it is not there to hold the process fluid, but it is to circulate the process fluid, and it will be having the fluid under pressure. Even the pressure will be increased in the pump. So its primary function is not to store the liquid or fluid, but its primary function is to increase the pressure and circulate the fluid. The same thing happens with turbine, generators, compressors, engines. Their primary function is not to store the fluid under pressure, but they are having different what we can say the characteristics and the different activities to perform. Like engines, there the power generation is the function. It is not meant to store the vessel. So all such equipments are out of the scope of ASME section and division 1. But what was the question? Can we have U stamp? Means it is not compulsory. Can we have? Means what? If we wish, can we have U stamp for these compressors, pump casings, then engine, cylinders, etc.? Yes, you certainly can. Why so? Because code tells us that if you satisfy all ASME section and division 1 requirement for design, inspection, testing, everything, then you can certainly have U stamp for the same. So these are what the parts we are discussing about. So here the reciprocating piston is there. This is the cylinder block. So for this also you can get U stamp. It is not compulsory. It is not compulsory. For pump, nobody will ask you to have U stamp. But if certain things you would like to have, let's say your customer want to have, then you can satisfy the code requirement and you can certainly get that as well. Then the structure's primary function is the transportation of the fluid from one location to another. Usually this is called as piping. So what are the piping systems like this? Correct? So its primary function is not to hold the liquid. Its primary function is to carry the liquid from one place to the other. So it is used for the transportation of the fluid. So this is outside the scope of ASME section and division 1. So U stamp is not compulsory for this kind of piping. But if you would like to have U stamp, you can certainly, by satisfying all code requirements, you can get U stamp for even for such pipings as well. Then piping components such as the pipe, flanges, bolting, gaskets, walls, expansion joints, fittings, pressure containing parts of the other components such as the strainers and the devices, which purposes are mixing, separating, snubbing, distributing, metering and controlling. As in case of control valve, its primary function is what? To control the or regulate the fluid. It's not primary function to hold the fluid under pressure, right? So all such components are called as piping components. So these are outside the purview of ASME section and division 1, for which U stamp is not compulsory even if the pressure is on the higher side. But Still, if your customer wants to have U stamp, what do you mean by U stamp? U stamp gives us the guarantee that the design has been done properly, the inspection material has been tested correctly, then the hydro testing and the final testing has already been done as per the code requirement. So it assures you the guarantee. So if your customer wants this as an additional safety beyond, let's say piping needs to be designed as per B31.1 or B31.3. But still, if your customer wants it to have U stamp, then you satisfy the code requirement and get the U stamp. So these are the pipe, flanges, fittings. So standard flange is not covered in division 1. It is to be selected as per B16.5. So if you satisfy the code requirement, you can still have U stamp for that as well. Even for the control wall body. This is the control wall body from where the fluid is going to flow. So this control wall body is outside the purview of the code. It is outside the scope of this division. But if you still want to have U stamp, if you love to have U stamp nameplate over this control wall, if your customer wants it, then satisfy the code requirements and you can get U stamp even for this. Is it compulsory? No, it is not at all compulsory. It is outside the purview of this scope and limitation of the section 8 division 1. But if you would like to have, then you can certainly have it. So if we come to our questions again, so can we have U stamp for pump casing? Can we have? Means what? It is not compulsory. Yes, certainly we can have it if we wish to. But is it compulsory? No, it is outside the scope of a division which has been covered under the different classes. Then reciprocating cylinder of an engine. Can we have U stamp? Can we have means it is not compulsory. It is an option given to us. So certainly, if you would like to, you can certainly have it. Otherwise, it is not compulsory as far as ASME section and division 1 is concerned. Same thing for piping and same thing for the other controlling parts like control wall body. So these are very important things, but many a times because of the lack of time and because of the work pressure, cutthroat competition, we didn't have that much time in past to go through this scope and limitations. But these are very, very important points which can guide you in many vessels at the time of designing. So whether you should go with U stamp, whether you can have U stamp or not. If it is a pipe and if your customer wants U stamp, can we have a U stamp for that? Certainly we can. So all these questions are very nicely covered and answered rather in the scope and limitations of the code. I hope you must have very nicely enjoyed this session. Thank you.